Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. My name's Lawrence, and I'm going to talk about what it means to be a product engineer and what it means to have a product engineering culture, why that's good, what we did at GX, and how you can apply it to your own company. So let's jump in. But first, I always like to start with a story. And this is a story about earlier in my engineering leadership career. I kind of used to think of my organization as like a manufacturing plant, or like a software factory. And it didn't mean that we always built the same thing, because it's software. But no matter what request came in, we would build it well, we would build it efficiently, build it on time. We could add people, get more capacity. We could upgrade our technologies. We could ship more often, get feedback, course correct. We could do all those things, but it was still in this model of we have a factory and we're evolving it. And over time, as the years went by, I realized the error of my ways, and that without, no matter how good another team, like a really good product team, is on the showroom floor and talking to customers and users and trying to bring that context back into your factory, it just does not do service to what actually people need to build properly. You really need a different mindset. So it's not product and engineering, it's really product engineering. So let's talk about what that means. I'll define it, talk about concrete examples from my current company, and then give you some tips. But first, a little bit about me. So about 15 years in various CTO, VPU roles, mostly at startups, and mostly in this growth stage. So less of a 0 to 1 type person, and less of a big company optimize and scale type person. I really like this messy middle of a company where you have a seed of a good team, a seed of a good product, some strong pull from the market. It's time to usually raise some more money, and you kind of go for it as a company, get your feet under you, deal with messy things like customers and operations and things like that. You can see where I've been. I'll talk about great expectations quite a bit, but also as Optimizely and wework, kind of had some larger teams there. Pave and ClearSlide, more Series B startups. Also a large security company in my background, which comes in handy sometimes. Been in the Bay Area. I've been here for a long time. Drove over the bridge this morning from good old sunny Oakland, California. All right. Actually, before I get into this, let me poll the audience. Who here is an engineering manager or, an engineering manager of a team, frontline manager? Okay, I'm looking at about a third. Who here is like a director or a VP, like owns like a bigger function of engineering? Maybe about half. And one other question would be, who here is at what they would call a startup? Okay, and who here is what you would call a large company, either IPO company or kind of pre-IPO? Okay, there's somewhere in the middle. Okay, that gives me a good sense. All right, well, let's jump in. So what defines a product engineering culture, and what is this product engineer, this mythical person? The first principle I want to talk about is that software engineering is really a creative process. Unlike other kinds of engineering, like building a car in a factory, for example, it's inherently creative. So why is that? It's because you're never doing the same thing twice, right? In software, if there was actually a piece of code that did exactly the behavior that you wanted, and it was on using the technology stack you wanted, you would just use that exact module. And actually, in our industry, reuse is a huge thing. So you're always adapting it a little bit differently for this business context, this company, this time. And that's where the artistry comes in, right? And engineers, no matter what kind of specification they have, no matter what they think they're building for, they're always making micro decisions as they write code. And some of these are invisible to anybody else, but they know they're making different choices. And frankly, some of them are actually subconscious. And you're just making them as you go because you have an idea of what you're trying to accomplish with code. So code is also a living, breathing thing, right? You're thinking about today. You're thinking about tomorrow, what you might do. You're thinking about what happened yesterday. You're thinking about what somebody else did yesterday because you're probably not in this code base alone. And everything needs to evolve. Very rarely in our industry do you have a chance to fully throw something away and start over. And often, and even if you have the chance, you shouldn't. So the real complexity is pretty much hidden from view, especially as the code base ages. From 1 week to a month to a year to a decade, this bottom of the iceberg gets bigger and bigger. So even a small change on the surface might lead to some pretty deep complexity underneath the hood. And only the engineer working in that code base understands that and has to make choices like, do I do that refactor now? Do I do it later? Do I do a small version? Do I do a big version? And you only really know once you're in there, basically. And all of the breakthroughs with AIs and LLMs and GitHub Copilot are pretty much just an extension of the same dynamic, right? Those technologies are hiding complexity from our human engineers. And so we have to basically get all the context possible about who and what we're building for as far in there as we can. So the way I think about it is those closest to the machine need all the context. So therefore, you need more like customer stories than precise tickets on what to build. You need more sketches and storyboards and user journey maps than high-res mocks. You need business goals that the company is ultimately trying to achieve versus project deadlines for a project with scope that's what you think you might need to accomplish the goal. So to do this, you need a type of engineer who thinks more broadly about their job. And thankfully, these people exist. I know many of them, and they're everywhere in the industry, but only recently have people talked about them with a name and really starting to identify their characteristics of the product engineer. So let's talk about who these people are. So they crave user context and interaction. Any information around market research, customer or user meetings, analytics, they will slurp it up and ask for more directly. They really optimize for fast feedback loops. They're always looking for the smallest piece of functionality that they can ship to get feedback in the quickest amount of time and adjust. But they're not pure incrementalists. They're also looking just a little bit in the future, a little bit around the corner. So if they're making a change, they are very good at deciding whether they should make a slightly broader change while they're in the code because of all the business context they have. They're also really, really good at evaluating next-gen bets at low cost. So, classic thing a product engineer does is get a POC set up that really proves out a certain approach, whether it's a technology approach or like a product idea, and do it in a scoped way that gives you good signal on whether it's something you should invest more in or whether it's not and you should just throw that away. So they're really, really good at this. And so they take it as part of their job to understand this whole domain. So they're great. You can hire these people and kind of import more of this mindset into your company. You can make it clear that's what you're optimizing for in your company and encourage that behavior. So you can do a lot of this stuff. But what about the product manager? And again, I probably should have put this in bigger font because I don't want to diminish the role of the product manager. The product manager's job is critically important. They are spending all their time with customers, all their time with users. And so what they can do in this model is they can really stay at that level and really focus on why. Why are we doing this? Do storytelling, context carrying, and a lot less writing tickets. So what's a prerequisite to actually have this work in your company? You need high trust and you need team autonomy. You need to actually give engineers a voice in product decisions. Otherwise, why did you ask them to have all this context in the first place? Basically, if you want a coding monkey, you have to. Why would you give that person the space? And so, also a safe space to propose alternative views of the world. Again, there's lots of priors that leadership has on why something is a certain way, but maybe you're wrong. What's an alternative view of the world, and how can we test that? But really, this is getting into team autonomy. I talk a lot about how software is built by teams, much more than it is by individuals. And team autonomy has been proven again and again to be what you want, especially on the how they're accomplishing the goal. So books like Drive by Dan Pink, talking about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Accelerate by Nicole Forsgren. All the research showing that teams that felt more autonomous performed way, way better. Everyone gets it. They're on board. They move fluidly week over week, but also hour over hour. And they don't have a lot of process, right? Because they don't need to. They all really understand what they're building for. So, this is a lot of evangelism on why this is a good idea, right? Move faster, you course correct more quickly, you're more outcome and goal focused, and you really can attract and retain the best talent. Engineers want to work this way. They want to be problem solvers, not just solution doers. So how do we get there? The people in this room, and it's your responsibility to really bring this kind of thinking in and push it in your organization. So let's talk about what I did in my role at my company. So great expectations. So a little bit about GX first, and then before we get into what actually happened. We have a popular open source tool for data quality, and it's basically a way to get detailed assertions about your data in place, to put in place in your pipelines, in third-party data ingests, and really protect yourself from getting broken or know when things break. But we also bridge the gap by compiling it into human-readable documentation that can be used to align your whole organization on what the meaning of data is and what you expect from it. It's been an open source project out there for a while. Most data engineers have either heard of it or used it. But the current company journey is around building a cloud version and towards getting to a real business. So you can see we've raised a lot of capital from some great investors. And then since I joined about 21 months ago, the company's grown. We've managed to avoid layoffs and kind of grow thoughtfully along the way. Engineering teams doubled quite a bit. I'll talk about doubled and grown quite a bit. I'll talk about what went into that. And then cloud product went from nothing, kind of like a figment of our imagination, to a fully featured SaaS product that's in late stages of beta and steaming towards a public launch in early next year. First thing I would say is that I definitely came in hot into this company and didn't waste time kind of spotting things and making certain changes. And again, that, if you're joining a new company soon, you can take this to heart. But even if you're at the same place for a while, you can always get fired up and come back to work and see if you can push for changes that you might have gotten otherwise used to. So I definitely spotted some big A agile, as I call it, at a relatively small company, kind of process, not serving the team, but the team serving the process. Stripped that down pretty quickly and replaced it with some lowercase a agile, more like lean UX principles. It was widely appreciated. Realized pretty quickly that our engineering team was very high on data fluency, some data practitioners who are becoming software engineers, like statistical modeling experts, but low on product SaaS experience, which is my background. So it was not a stretch for me to go out and bring in more product SaaS experience into the company with people who wanted to get into the data domain and complement the team that was there, and kind of widely appreciated by everybody, but really got to work on that right away. And then lastly, product strategy. Sometimes as an engineering leader, you're not in all the conversations around product strategy, or what I found is you're just so busy running an org and hiring people and managing people that you don't have as much time to participate as you would like. So I made sure not to make that mistake at this company. Set the tone from day one, and actually day minus 20, which is when I hadn't fully decided to join the company, but I flew out to see the co-founders, and we spent a day in an Airbnb, and we talked about a whole lot of stuff. And what did we mostly talk about? Product strategy. Bringing the creator, who's the engineer actually creating the product, making it real, and the customer together, and finding ways to do that more efficiently and just to reinforce the message. So getting engineers into developer relations and support rotations, building that user empathy, getting a holistic sense of the APIs and the docs that everyone uses every day. And then different kinds of things, like calling timeout on regular work and having a data DNA day where groups got into, took public data sets, deconstructed them, found something interesting, built a pipeline, and then used GX to test it, all in a day. People learned a ton. They kind of walked in the shoes of a data practitioner, and it makes them better engineers, and especially better product engineers. And then the company has a work out loud culture, which I can't claim credit to, but a big focus on everything being out in the open. So documents being by default open, channels being by default public. And why hide something? Is it really going to be that bad if someone runs into this document? So that was there, and really helps the company achieve a pretty good full remote culture. But we definitely doubled down on this with user and customer context. So you can see here like a Slack post from one of our PMs, trying to have the most digestible piece around, this is context from a recent customer conversation. Here's the product board insight if you want to know more. Here's a Gong video, but here's also the Gong snippet to get to the good stuff. And really doing extra work to get this signal to be as clear as possible and go deep into the organization. So things like that just really make an impact, and we started those pretty soon. Here I just want to talk about aligning the organization in general on what you're trying to do. So this is a slightly different way of doing things than this company did before, and if you're doing this at your company, you do the same thing. So just really being clear about you're operating differently, and you're kind of writing down and then repeating what you want. So outcome level goals over outputs, we all say that, but if your highest level goals as a company are output level goals, then it doesn't matter what you as an engineering leader are doing underneath. It doesn't matter. It'll still be outputs at the end. So you have to really push for the outcomes, and then you can ladder up to those properly. Role definitions, like the product manager and the product engineer, being a little different than people are used to. You have to write it down and be very clear, and then point to it constantly. We have this role we call the epic lead. Not an unusual role and name, but for us, the epic lead is an engineer who has a lot of ownership about the epic, and they do a lot of work to scope it. When the thing has a partial rollout and launches, they are the ones who are doing a lot of fine-tuning, and the product manager can really be more at the high level. What's the next big epic? Like, what are the overall priorities? So writing those things down and just repetition, repetition, repetition. You can see here, big shout out for Go links, by the way. If you have documents, if you have a writing culture at your company, it can be overwhelming sometimes. So find the small set, the critical few documents that are really important and really say what you're doing, and put them behind an easy link, and then, again, always bring them up. Okay, I want to talk a bit about realigning teams. So I've written a lot about this. There's a great book I did not write called Team Topologies. Highly recommend it. But basically, there's different ways you can align your engineering teams, especially once you're big enough to have more than one team. So you can be technology aligned, like a front-end team and a back-end team and a mobile team and a data team. Tends to be good for engineers of a feather are together, but it tends to be slow to get anything done end-to-end. So it's really not aligned with fast feedback and product engineering at the heart of it. Product and feature-aligned teams, much more popular nowadays and tend to work better in the short term, but over time, people switch gears a lot, and so it can lead to fragmentation of your technology stack of kind of code base knowledge. So the best thing to do really is to have teams that are oriented around value streams, like a durable stream of value to a certain user, certain persona, and usually those end up aligning you on a part of your domain. So a little bit more durable, a little harder to figure out what to do, but if you get them in place, it's kind of the magic balance. So at Great Expectations, we had an open source team that existed when I joined, fully focused on the open source project, and then we started building a cloud team from zero. Over time, those teams grew. The open source team grew and became 2 teams. The cloud team got pretty big, but they stayed 2 different teams. And even for a small company where you think that communication would really go, again, all the things I said before, it shouldn't be that hard to stay on the same page. Actually, these team boundaries are really, really important. And we realized that dependencies were starting to increase given our new thoughts about the cloud product. So we had to do a pretty brave realignment of the teams. And we thought about it for a few months, and then did pretty much a reshuffling where everybody was realigned onto full stack teams where people from the front end and the back end of the cloud product and the open source product were on the same team, focusing on kind of a subset of the domain. Within a couple weeks, really, really positive feedback from the team and really a lot better results. So I really encourage you to build full stack teams and find out where those boundaries are. I have written a lot on this, so I'm going to move on, but I'll point to a blog that I've written on Medium. And again, Team Topologies talks a lot about this. Okay, the last one for Great Expectations, what we did that I want to make a big deal about is addition by subtraction. And for reasons, I think partly due to our open source lineage as a company, Great Expectations was not great at removing old stuff from the open source code base. So over time, a lot of cruft built up, both internally and also like an old way to do this, an old API, an old thing that was never really an API, but people used it anyway. Those things built up probably more than your average company. So it really became important for the team to feel empowered to get rid of stuff. And so we came up with this metaphor to kind of motivate ourselves called the Viking funeral, picture here, where, and then again, this is the mindset here is that whatever you're getting rid of, it had a reason for existence. It wasn't like a bad idea back then. It served its time. It added some value. It's not the right thing for now, so we're going to call it dead. We're going to put it on a boat. We're going to light it on fire, and we're going to move on. So we really, really leaned into this metaphor, and it had a pretty huge cultural influence on the company. So here you can see actually our first in-person Viking funeral at an all-company offsite. Again, we're a fully remote company, so we all flew to Charleston, South Carolina, and this is me getting pieces of paper from various engineers representing things that they had recently gotten rid of. And we put it on a paper boat, and we lit it on fire. So we really took this pretty seriously, and it's gone on ever since. We have Slack posts about the latest Viking funeral. It has to be fully eradicated from the code base to count. And just think of all the benefits, right? Like most features actually that are launched don't have a positive effect on engagement. At worst, they have a neutral effect. So, as an industry, we're not as good about getting rid of features. Deleting code is just a virtue. It's just less stuff to worry about. So look for opportunities and celebrate that, and find spots where you can actually reduce the amount of code you have. And then, start small. We had probably the first thing here, all these pieces of paper in the fire, were actually smaller things. But over time, that really emboldened the team to make bigger changes. And now we're actually midstream on coming up with a 1.0 version of Great Expectations, which is cleaning up a whole lot of stuff. And again, there's going to be some breaking changes for the community, and we have to be careful, but it really embodies the spirit of moving on and getting rid of stuff so you can move in the future faster. Okay. I want to talk a lot about bringing these learnings into your own company, but I think I'm running short on time, and I want to make sure we get questions. So I'm going to go through these pretty fast. People decisions. That's one thing you can do right away, is decide who you hire, who you promote, who you recognize, and make sure that they're embodying these kinds of product engineering principles. And again, engineers have to want to do this. You have to convince them that it's a good idea. But you can also import talent in from outside of your company. This could be a whole talk on its own. I think actually people have given plenty of talks about really partnering with product. I call it Project Bear Hug, where it's warm and it's soft, but it's kind of not optional. And there's a lot of things I could say about that, including not having budgets, like a budget for technical debt. I think those are anti-patterns. You want to have conversations with your product peer, and that enables a motion like this to work. A word on platform teams, since some of you might be at larger companies where you're on a team that doesn't directly serve users or customers, but has an internal customer. Really around, trying to make that extra hop. Talk to your customers internally, find out what their product strategy is, meet your grand customers, if at all possible, or at least get visibility into what they're actually doing, who they are. And if you're going to create a platform team, this is again a whole other talk, but think twice. You're just, do you really need it? Hyperscale companies like an Uber, they need really, really scalable platforms. But a lot of companies prematurely build these. So you're just adding more distance from the engineer to the customer, so be very careful about that. And then get out of the building. So you're all here, you're at Elevate, kind of consuming in content from the outside, but it's just, there's a lot of good stuff out there, so bring it into your company and ignite conversations. All right, last thing. How do you know this is working? I thought it would be good to put together a little bit of a litmus test. So engineers mention customer names and usernames in everyday conversation. That's a great sign. They're talking about their current hypothesis or bet that is, they're trying to validate. It might not be true, but they're trying to validate it. They come up with alternate ideas, and at least one of them wins the day. So you have to make sure that at some point, a sign this is working is that one of those ideas or alternate approaches actually sees the light of day. And then you see engineers who might, really keep themselves interested with a technically more complex problem, proposing more simple and less challenging solutions because they know that they want to get it out sooner and get more feedback. Product features get removed. Projects failing validation are stopped along the way. Hey, this is a 10-month project, but 3 months in, we have a pretty clear sense that this is not valid, so we're going to stop. Product managers start seeing their engineers building the right way and are comfortable with giving up control of the details, right? Because they know the right thing is going to happen. They can focus on the high level, on the why. And then because of that, product managers they're willing to bring in all this context into the team, write that really good Slack post because they see the positive ROI that they get. So these are all good signs that anything you might try tomorrow is going to work. But I want to end with a challenge. So the hardest thing I talked about is actually getting product scope removed. Right? You might feel as an engineering leader you're not empowered to do this, but I assure you, you are. So I have a challenge for people in this room, which is in the next few weeks, think about your product and think about a low-value feature and do your damnedest to get it killed. And again, there's probably some of you who work on amazing products, but I guarantee you there's some feature or aspect of it that is really not that important, and it's just in the way. If you can't do this, find some low-value code in your code base, really prioritize it and encourage people to actually finally get rid of it instead of just talking about it, and then celebrate the heck out of it and have a Viking funeral. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. That was just packed with a ton of info. I really loved it, and there were a couple key things that I got from it too. I think that user focus from I'm a software engineer, and sometimes there's so many micro decisions that you're just not really sure about that, if you had a better understanding of your user, that you would just make better decisions on. Docs are a good example. A lot of times I'm just not sure how much time to invest in them. So definitely really appreciated that. And especially, I know it's something that, companies like onboard you with a lot of time, but then it never happens again.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think the ongoing process of it is really cool. Another thing too, that was the Viking funeral. Mm-hmm. I think I'm definitely gonna I'm definitely going to bring that to my team. And I think I know a couple of good places. A lot of feature flags that never go deleted is a big one.
We actually, for our epics, if you only get like the green check mark if you delete the flag. And we have a feature flag budget. You can only have a certain number of flags in the company. Want to add one?
100%. Yeah, there's so many in there, man, that they don't get any use, but they're just, they need a Viking funeral for.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right, cool. Well, feel free to add your questions in Slido. We already have a couple. We'll go to the first one here. Let's see. So, yeah, I love this question. How did you balance technical excellence with user centricity during the shift to a product-focused culture?
That's a great question. I'm asked a lot, like, does this mean the definition of a senior engineer is different at this company? And it does, and it doesn't. So I'll try to give the nuanced answer there. Technical competency is still of the utmost. It's just about what that actually means. I think sometimes people think about that meaning you can build something more complex, and that's a sign of seniority and competency, where actually, I think a real sign of seniority is building something simpler. Understanding what you really need to do and being like a surgeon and building the minimal thing to get things done. So it's more around how you actually talk about competency. So talking about building things simpler. I mentioned the low-cost POCs. So if there's something like a big dream, a really technically exciting thing that could really set the company on the rocket ship, what's the POC, the low-risk way you can de-risk that, as opposed to, trust me, give me a few people and I'll tell you in 3 months. So that kind of mindset, I think, is what you're rewarding. But really being able to code fluently and to like do that at the same time that you understand your user, that's just a skill. So, for example, in our interview process, our kind of technical and coding assessments those are probably increased in rigor since I joined, even though we're actually, you might think that we're a little more relaxed on that because we're looking for product thinking. The base fundamentals of you are a software engineer and you write code and you're fluent and you're fast and you don't make mistakes as much as other people, those things all still hold. Yeah,
definitely. That's an awesome answer. And yeah, I totally agree. Like, I think whenever I notice myself as an engineer trying to give an estimate of like, it could be 1 month to 3 months, I'm like, okay, that's a sign. Like, I'm doing something wrong. Like, I need to basically do the upfront work and try to, one, like, cut it into smaller pieces, and two, like, de-risk it a little bit more. So, yeah, good stuff. All right, let's go to the next one. I think we have time for one more. Let's see. What practices or rituals were established to foster continuous improvement and learning within your engineering organization?
Yeah, I think, so continuous improvement is a broad category. So there's probably a lot of things there. One thing we did was, so teams, we have these different full stack teams, and they're all doing their own retrospectives. But we definitely have, wider retrospectives that are kind of like town hall meetings. So you have these different pods that they've kind of thought about what's working for them and what's not working for them. But then you get everybody together in kind of a town hall. And these are different than any meeting where you have a slide deck. It's just getting people together and really doing a company-wide retro. I think those have really helped people reflect on what have they actually been doing in the past couple weeks. And these are more on like a monthly cadence and foster that sense of improvement. And then on the customer or user side, again, anything that gets any touch from any user, even if it's a feature flag for one organization with like one like white glove customer, you just magnify that. And you magnify where you were right, and you magnify where you were wrong. So I think that's a big thing. Sometimes users and customers tell you things that surprise you and might kind of ruin your day. But it's really, think about it. It's much better to know now than next week, right? So we kind of celebrate getting negative news from users.
Yeah, got it. Awesome, Lawrence. Thank you so much. Yeah, we are at time, but there is one more question I'm asking to all speakers.
Okay.
What is one book that you would recommend to the audience that changed the way you work or, live your life?
Wow.
Sorry, I forgot to prep you with this one.
When you said like live my life, that's pretty broad. I would actually say, I mentioned it, I think Drive by Dan Pink is really, really a seminal work. I know it's like 6, 7, 8 years old now, maybe 10, but it gets to the ultimate psychology of why empowering people gets the best out of them. And really, there's still tons of top-down cultures out there that don't realize how people actually work. So Drive by Dan Pink, that'd be the one.
Awesome. Let's give it up for Lawrence one more time. Thank you so much, everyone.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.